can see if you're trying to do a value proposition, and I did one, just a simple one on the PowerPoint, will show you of them eating another kilogram or unlocking one that you could roll out to a farmer and actually say, there's your value proposition for getting your money back, and it just comes back wholesale. It just prints really well. So the indigestible bit and eating some more starchy feed, do that, but you can see he's 15, on this one I've joined it 15% empties here. Yeah, that's where he was, that farm. Yeah, it's a lot of cows, over 500 cows, you know, that are empty. And then 11, oh, that should have been 8, sorry. We're back to 5 now. So if I add what I've done is add the empties and 6 week in calf rate effect that we've got there. So from that point to there is $96,000. You see what can keep me on? I'm chicken's feed compared to that. If I was running a decent business, I'd be doing enterprise bargaining and say I'll have X% of that. But it doesn't work like that. And all I've done here is say the feed margin that was sitting up there, remember? I've dragged that down, that's that number there now. And then I've added that to that and equally down here. So it's gone from 1.96 to 2 million there. Yeah? Of margin over feed costs. So if you add those two together, it doesn't make the feed cost look so bad when you're actually amortising that back over some fertility gains at the same time, not just over extra milk. Makes it more look palatable, to use financially palatable. And the beanies bankers, if their audits actually gave a genetic wastage rate in the herd, most people would get an F for it, you know, on their report card. Does that make sense? They're auditing that wastage figure. We've actually put some wastage figures over that number. I mean, that's the difference between, you know, that's the difference between a black P&L line and a red P&L line for mine. Or that's the difference between them being able to pay principal off or even being able to pay their interest off. Because some of them are up to $1.80 to $1.90 a kilogram of milk solids just for the interest. And that's sensational, that. Plus I really haven't added the extra days in milk into this. Because I've got the tight calvings and higher, I can get those extra days out of those cows quite easily without worrying about where my grass is coming from at all. And calcium makes it contract. So I've got push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. So I've got muscles everywhere, guys. All that rumen wall there, the red bit, all muscle. Relax, contract, yeah. Reproduction tissue, right? So you don't get, you know, long calvings. Half the problem in Southland was not enough calcium pre-calving to actually get those muscles contracting, to get rid of the thing. And even in the teat canals, you know, in the teat canals of the udder, the same process is working there. So what we found is that we get less mastitis because you've got enough calcium. After the milking shed, guess what happened? They all contract over and they stop leaking. And if they go and sit in the mud out there, there's a busload of bugs wants to go up a hole. Do you know what I mean? And cause somatics and mastitis. So we close that off after milking. Equally, it shunts oxytocin, which is a milk letdown hormone, so that comes out really quickly, and they don't have these long milkings, so the chances of the cups should have been left on another minute because the milking's slow. It's probably a calcium deficiency. And that's the last thing we want to do, is leave the cups on while everyone else wants to go. You've got these slow milkers. A lot of it's just the calcium problem. So they let their milk down really quickly, close the canal off after it, and there's a barrier for bugs and streps and all sorts of things to go back up there, especially on pads when they sit down, or winter barns and that kind of thing. So the only way we could get the line flour really in was these became instantly useful for that approach. So this bug here, he looks like an alien, but he produces a litres lactose and a protein shift in the milk. Yep. So the lactose bit drives the protein. That makes sense. So that's why litres fall off at the end, because the lactose is limiting at the end of lactation and they fall off, right? But if you chuck some more starchy rumen fermentable like wheat, barley, tapioca in there, yeah, you drive these guys to reproduce themselves. Does that make sense? So if you could animate this, you would. Now these are live microbial protein. They're moving around almost with a personality. That makes sense? You understand? So it's a live system. Happier where they haven't got 30, 40 cows in the lane mob out here with milk withdrawal and being treated. And the biggest, scarcest resource on farm is what? Labour. Eh? Labour. Correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah. So so that's what's going on in that one there. And the good thing about that little yeasty guy there, Diamond V yeast that we found, is he actually eats up the lactic acid. So when the starch comes and ferments, creates lactic acid, drops the pH. But if you're feeding the yeast in there, that eats the lactic acid for breakfast, dinner, lunch, play lunch, everything else. So it's a good deal. Do you know what I mean? So the pH, instead of down there, frying these guys, actually comes up very quickly where it doesn't kill off any of the bug or the rumen factory workers, if we like. Does that make sense? So you can call these rumen factory workers, and the more of them you've got, the better things are. You know what I mean? You can have all the genetics in the world, but if you start frying your bugs, you wreck the factory. So the other type of starch, guys, maize. So maize is a different kind of starch. We call it rumen bypass starch. Yeah. So what that's really doing, because the starch granule is really, really big, whereas the wheat granule is really small. So you can understand taking a lot more time to grind that down into something useful for these guys here, whereas the wheat and tapioca are really, really small granules. They're instantly available to go poof, you know, so they fizz quickly, they degrade quickly, and therefore they're dangerous because you get this lactic burn or lactic overload going on in there. Yep. But this maize is really useful because the red line says a lot of it bypasses through here, and they use it for body weight and for mating. Now we're quite happy to switch the switch a little bit when we get to the mating point, shift the starchy sources from there over to the maize so that we actually get body weight gain. And instead of them stripping weight to keep doing milk, they just hold up there nicely for a long, long period of time. But now the weight comes up. So what that means is if we're pulpating a follicle, I don't do this every day, but what you've got is a peanut. If things aren't right, the energy status isn't right, you're trying to make what we call a peanut follicle. It's only 5 millimetres in diameter. Nothing going to happen with that. You get empty rates with that. What we're trying to pulpate is a golf ball size, which is a dominant follicle. Does that make sense? So the easiest way to do that is to punch the glucose into them with molasses, get this shift up here where they go back to body weight here. Yep. And we'll be mating some really nice follicles that have got really good chance of implanting and surviving and not falling off again. Barbecuing these bugs, and we know how to keep them safe. Yep. So this hot fuel that we're putting on it, the last thing you want to do is barbecue these guys. Yeah. And there's a trade risk. Do you know about Bovatek and Rumensin? You understand what I mean? They're antibiotic-like substances that putting into the dairy industry that actually increase litres. They actually promote these guys. You know cocci and crypto? Coccidiosis and crypto in calves, they get the bloody scour in the calves, and the blood in the scour is a little beast called a protozoa, and it's either cocci or it's crypto. Now crypto's foul, watery, brand smelling. We know the difference, but you get the blood in it, you've got cocci. So they would use rumensin or Bovatec in there to stop that problem. Yeah? It's a trade risk now, and it's going to be banned because Europe are looking at it as an antibiotic in there, and they don't want this antibiotic resistance thing. So these are going to come out of the industry, and we've got to look to try and replace them somehow. We already know what we're doing because we can see this coming. In fact, the Aussie guys are going to have it banned in July. So no more rumensin or Bovatec to be used in these things. So now the salt and the yeast and the buffers become even more important to us, and enough fibre in the mouthful become even more important to us because you haven't got those things to control what happens in the brewery here. Yep, got that? So it's just we know what's going on out here, and we're already one step ahead of it because they come to me and say, what's that going to do? I said, nothing at all. We've already figured out how to work without it, to live without it. You can see it coming.